Hello friends, it's been quite some time since I promised a full tutorial on how to paint my Sons of the Phoenix. So here I go, heavy metal style, and I will start with the armor. So feel free to skip this step if you already know how to create a wet palette, but I feel that it's super necessary, especially when you are painting white. So basically you want some plastic container. I am for example using this one. I will put in there some toilet paper, pour some water on it, and I will put there a parchment paper that is about the same size as the toilet paper. Make sure to spread it nicely so it doesn't roll, and once you got it, just flip it, and you will use this side. It is important to cover your miniature in a base coat because Corax White spray is not exactly the same color as Ulthuan Grey. And this is the case even if you are starting with Corax White from the pot. And I am starting off by putting some paint on the wet palette and mixing it with water. I am using my rubber glove to test the consistency of the paint, because after all you don't want it to be too thick but not too thin. If it's too thick, chances are that the details are not gonna be that crisp, but if it's too thin, chances are that the paint is not gonna be even visible. So you wanna water down this paint just so 2 coats will be enough. Now you will start covering the armor, and what you wanna focus on is so the brush strokes are not even visible. So that is pretty much what I'm doing here, just focusing on making it smooth, and you can really see it on the shoulder pad here. Some brush strokes might be visible, so you will have to come back and cover it one more time. This is especially the case for the flat surfaces, just like this shoulder pad here. But honestly, it's pretty easy to avoid, just put there more layers on top of it and it's gonna be just fine. Now you might think that some areas are not even that visible, but trust me, you wanna paint those as well. Such areas might not even be sprayed that well, so you'll have to put there more layers than you are used to. And you will see me come back to the same points on the armor over and over again, but it's really necessary to make one even layer. Now regarding the last point that I talked about, that you should paint all of the parts even if they are not that visible. Of course, if you are just using this miniature for playing, don't sweat it. So once I feel that the white is pretty nicely done with one even layer, I will get a Genestealer purple, test it on my glove and base coat the left knee pad. After all, Sons of the Phoenix have just left knee pad that is purple and the whole right arm. Now I have seen that some people even paint the helmet in purple, but I don't really like that. You can see here on the knee pad that I am also covering the recess that separates the white and the purple. And that's absolutely fine because it's gonna be washed anyway. And you know, the same applies here as for the white. You want it to be one even layer with no brush strokes visible. There are some parts that are really hard to reach, for example this shoulder pad under his backpack, so just be really careful around that. And in general it's really important to be careful around the white because it covers really badly. So if you have to fix any mistakes with white, you are gonna have a bad time. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but honestly, it's gonna take you a while. You can see here on the arm that I am adding more layers because I see that the edges are a little bit transparent. And that is exactly a sign that I am looking for when I am suspecting that it needs another layer. Since I am still not entirely sure, I'm just adding another layer so no brush strokes are visible. And just like that, we got a nice base coat. For shading, I am using Corax Earth Shade because it makes the white a little warmer. And at this step you will really feel why you need a really super thin brush. Because you will shade just the recesses, it is important that you are as precise as you can be. Sometimes it will take multiple brush strokes to make a really nice, visible line in the recess. And honestly, just be patient and create that contrast between the recess and the rest of the armor. And you know, you can really use any paint that you want to create a wash. For example, you can just water down a Rhinox hide to make a really similar wash to this Corax Earth Shade. And that is especially true if you are using it for black lining. As you will see, this is really time consuming, but trust me, it's necessary. And you know, I have tested Apothecary White Contrast Paint, even made a video about it, but it doesn't create enough contrast for me. Apothecary white would be more useful for robes and capes instead of panels and armor. So I'm saying that you should try to be as precise as you can, but you know, it's inevitable that you will stain something around, and we will fix that later. In some frames you can see me reach many times to dip the brush again and again, and that is because the wash is drying up quite quickly, so I might actually experiment and water down Rhinoxhide in the future. Since this whole process is so time consuming, I would recommend oil washing instead if you are painting a whole army or squad. You see, oil wash gets straight into recesses, but you need to use gloss varnish first. So if you guys want me to make a video about that, let me know in the comments. So yeah, I'm just progressing here, try to be as neat as you can, as it will save you work, but we are gonna fix the mistakes later anyway, but just keep in mind that it's gonna save you time. Notice that I am using Agrax Earthshade even to shade purple parts, as I think that Agrax Earthshade is really a universal wash. I am even washing around those little golden parts, so I know where to clean up and where to place highlights. Moving on, I'm progressing and shading just about every crack and recess that I see. Be really careful around the helmet, because that is the center of attention, and you definitely don't want to ruin that. So if anything, take as much time as you need for the helmet. As I already mentioned, you will do pretty much the same thing with the purple. Since purple will cover better in the cleanup stage, you can afford to be more rough with it. So if the wash spills over to the flat surface, it's not such a big deal. Painting each finger separately is also a challenge, but honestly, it is not that bad with the purple. So now we are done, and even though you might think that this is not that precise, you can compare how I used to shade my white Space Marines on the right. Since I shaded them like this, cleanup stage just took me eternity. But with this result we will be way quicker. Cleanup is pretty self-explanatory term for what I'm doing here. Basically I have spilled the wash to some areas where it shouldn't be, and because of that I have to come back to my Ulthuan Grey and clean it up. So basically you have to make the shades a little thinner. Now it might happen that you make the shade too thin, and in that case just give it one more round of shading. In this phase you have to really consider the thickness of your paint, as going too thin might take you eternity but will give you great result. Going a little bit thicker, on the other hand, might be a little faster, but can sometimes give you chalky surface. I would personally recommend aiming for something in between. Since we are painting white, this is even more difficult than with any other color, maybe with an exception of yellow. Painting a light color over dark shade will just take you more time. As you will see later, cleanup with purple is way easier. Notice that in this edge right under his chest is not enough space to fool around. So the cleanup here does not have to be super perfect, as the highlight that you are gonna put here might be enough. And even so, I am still trying to make the shade a little bit thinner here. If you are planning to paint multiple white Space Marines, I would consider which spots on the armor do necessarily need cleanup, because exactly this is the example of the spot that doesn't really need it. Another one would be probably under his backpack. As you can see here, it is sometimes better to leave some parts unassembled. Like here, if the head was not there, I would have easier time fixing this little recess. This socket right here is exactly a part where I thinned down the recess shade too much, so I have to come back to Agrax to fix it. Take your time with the face, as that is the point of attention. Thin down your base paint, even if it takes longer, you want it to be smooth. Do the same thing with the Genestealer purple, but this time it is gonna be quite easier, as the purple covers well. And now it is almost time to start highlighting. After the cleanup, it is time to cover little joints and sockets all over his armor. And I will start base coating them with black. Now, since darker paints are really well pigmented and way difficult to cover, be really careful not to stain the white armor. Since I already have the black, it looks way better to paint a hole for his neck, so it might be better if you paint it unassembled. If you assemble it, however, chances are that you are gonna mess up, just like me here, and that you are gonna have to fix it later with Ulthuan Grey. As you can see here, I made some mistake as well, so I'm just coming back to Ulthuan Grey to fix it. And in general, if you wanna make your life a little bit easier, and if you are painting a whole army of white Space Marines, you might wanna just paint those areas in metallic paint and wash it with Nuln Oil. That way you will get really nice result in no time. Now once again, since I already have the black, I will prepare the lenses to work on them later. And the same applies here, just try to be as careful as you can. So now I'm gonna take Dark Reaper and create first highlight. And this one is gonna be quite thick, you're just gonna leave black in the recesses, and it might not be visible right away, but trust me, it will be in the end. Now I'm gonna take Thunderhawk Blue and I'm gonna make even thinner highlight. And this one is not only gonna be thinner, but also shorter. So overall, I will cover way less surface. Now for the semi-final highlight, I'm gonna take Fenrisian Grey. And this one might be even final depending on how much effort do you wanna put in. And of course, that means that this time it's gonna be even thinner and shorter than the previous highlight. Now there's an option for the last highlight, and that is gonna be with Blue Horror. And I am not sure if you can even call it a highlight, because you are just gonna put there some dots. So for example, right here, I'm trying to place a small blue dot in the center of all highlights. This might take you a few tries, so just be patient. And after all this effort, this is what you should get. So right here, you can compare the result that we got and the result with metallic paint and Nuln Oil. And you can pretty much decide for yourself which one you want more. I can honestly tell you that the left one is way more time efficient. Interestingly enough, you can help yourself a lot by adding gloss varnish to your white. Since the white paint is usually very chalky and the white is not in nature really reflective color, it will not be noticeable on the miniature and it will make your life way easier. I got this tip from Vince Venturella, so shout out to him. And now what you gotta do is edge highlight every single edge on the miniature. And this will take you time, but will make your miniature look so good. I usually like to say that this is the part where magic happens, as the miniature usually looks really bad until you start highlighting the hell out of it. And when you are highlighting the edges around the little recesses, just be careful so you don't have to shade the miniature all over again. Sometimes you will have to come back to your highlight and just put another highlight on top of it so it is really visible. Making sure that the highlight stands out will make your miniature very crisp. Now it might happen that you make the highlight way too thick, and in such cases just take Ulthuan Grey and make it a little thinner. So as I am progressing with the miniature and as I am adding more and more highlights, just see and compare the parts that are highlighted and that are not. And you can really see that the highlights make all the difference. Sometimes you will really have to be patient with hard to reach spots. Now you don't have to highlight every single thing like this, but since I'm pretty much autistic at this point, I just have to do it. And I have painted every single white Space Marine just like this, so you can just imagine the level of autism that I operate at. But if you wanna be faster, as always, consider which parts definitely need highlights and which are not that visible. Now there are also these little buttons all around the armor, so you are gonna pick them out with white as well. When you reach the inner part of the shoulder pad, make sure to make just one straight line from top down. And you are gonna place it right next to the recess. And once again you can see that it has to be done multiple times over and over again to be truly visible. And when you reach these really small surfaces, like for example these fingers here, it is really tricky because you have small surface to operate on. So just be really patient at this point. Now the white armor on the miniature is almost fully highlighted, with an exception of the helmet. And now you might be wondering, why am I painting lenses before the helmet highlights? Well, the reason for that is that if you already highlighted the helmet and now you are painting lenses, chances are that you are gonna spill some paint over to the area that is already painted. And in this case, you are gonna have more difficulties fixing that. To actually paint the lenses, you will need these three bad boys. And you can already guess that we are gonna start from the darkest to the brightest. And I'm gonna cover the whole lens, but there should be a black running around the lens, so just cover the whole lens and leave out this black around it. Once you get it, and when it's dry, progressively add more brighter paint to the inner corner of the lens. This time it is Arial yellow. As I go, I'm pushing even further to the corner, more brighter yellow, while still leaving there some black that surrounds the lens. This process is often messy and will need fixing as you go along the way, and that is exactly the reason why we are doing this now, right before highlighting the helmet. You can see that I'm even adding some white to the yellow to make it pop. The last thing to do with the lens is a little white dot on the outer corner of the lens. This might take you a few tries, but even so, try to be precise. Whenever you are painting faces, you will really feel the need to have really quality brushes. You know, for all those details, faces and helmets, I'm always using this one. It's called the Da Vinci Maestro and it's Kolinsky brush. It really holds the tip nicely, it holds the paint and it's just really durable. So what I'm trying to say that if you are painting faces and helmets a lot, you should really invest in quality brushes. So this is what you get after some minor adjustments and you can start highlighting the face now. Well, that sucked. So basically come back to black and make a thin line in there and fix it. So now that I know that I have to be even more careful, just continue highlighting around the face and just try not to hit any recesses. And be super careful around those little pinholes around the nose, because too much paint in there might clog them, and it's really unfixable. Well, maybe it is, but it's really problematic. After some time you are pretty much finished highlighting, so this is what we got. Now to highlight purple, I will mix magenta and the Chala lilac. And I will do that in 1:1 ratio. Now you can skip this highlight and just use pure Chala lilac to achieve a result like this, which is way faster, but in my opinion it doesn't look as good. So by mixing these paints you will get this sort of bubblegum color, and that is exactly what you want. This highlight can be a little bit thicker because you are gonna stack some more highlights on top of that. Now since this exact highlight on the shoulder pad is too thick, I have to come back to Genestealer purple to fix it. And that is the case for all purple highlights. If it's too thick, you can fix it with Genestealer purple. But remember to make it a little thicker than the rest, because you are gonna stack some more highlights on top of it, as I already said. Now in this step, I don't necessarily highlight all the edges with the Chala lilac, but just the top parts of them. So for example, I will skip the bottom part of the knee pad or the bottom of the arm. Now this is purely optional, but if you want, you can add a little bit of white to your Chala lilac or just use full grim pink and put a dot on each edge corner. And now we are done and you can compare for yourself which result do you like more. If you are painting a whole army of Sons of the Phoenix, you can probably use the left one, but for those characters I would recommend the right one. Alright guys, so this is the video, and you know, this is gonna be a multi-part series where I am finishing this Sons of the Phoenix Space Marine, so if you wanna see more, subscribe to my channel. And if you wanna support the channel, give this video a like, so the Emperor will bless me and will shove this video in front of others. And you know, if you have any general feedback, you can just leave it down in the comments. And see you, painters, in the next video. Bye!